Okay, welcome to Harpswell Special Select Board meeting of Thursday, June 27th. We'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry about that. Adoption of the agenda.
Oh, looks good to me.
We got Garrison Cove added on there. Public comment. We got Ken, no? All right, at this point, Will Haskell's going to give us a little presentation on Abner Point and Lowell's Cove roads.
Yeah, probably just Abner Point.
Oh, really? Okay.
What?
Probably
Just Abner Point or
Just Abner Point.
just Abner Point? Not Lowell's Cove?
Nope.
What happened?
We had our meeting last week, I guess, the kickoff meeting, so I don't really have anything on Lowell's Cove yet.
Oh, okay.
So the
I-
purpose of this was based on kind of a status update meeting that I held with Mary Ann and Mark, where we were talking about Bethel Point, the status of Bethel Point Road and Abner Point Road resiliency projects. And I think we're pretty much all set relative to Bethel Point Road in terms of where we're headed with that. I just wanted to get back in front of folks relative to Abner Point Road, just to talk a little bit about some of the challenges associated with trying to make that road more resilient and with all the different properties and buildings that are kind of down near the boat ramp there. When we start looking at raising that road, it brings up a lot of kind of challenges that just wanted to review with you folks and get your take on it. So that was really the purpose of today's meeting.
A little background, is my family's been there for, almost 300 years.
Mm-hmm.
When my grandfather's kid, there was a bridge there between Lowell's Cove and Miracle Cove.
Okay.
So the water has always flowed between the two, except they filled in the marsh at one point and did the road. So,
Right.
so basically where I'm coming from, the water's gonna go through there sometimes, and sometimes it's not gonna go through there.
Yep.
And raising the road, we just put over 100,000 into a boat ramp, and plus you've got the two star cottages on either side, you've got the Senate Drive right there. All of a sudden they'd be going down like that, and you got the Muncie Cottage right over there on the right. So I would say, that's not engineer talk, but, it's-
No, I mean, and it basically, Kevin, what you just said verifies what we're seeing when we start
yeah.
putting engineering plans down on paper.
Yeah.
So, and again, that was really the purpose, is just to give you an update on that and get a sense of, make sure that we want to keep going with that approach and
Yeah.
put that into a report, or if we want to do
But
something different, I
if-
guess.
As long as we're here, though, David and I weren't in the discussion of Lowell's Cove, which to me is almost the same situation. It is absolutely nothing you can do other than a 10-foot seawall along the beach area, and the rest of it's all private property. My sister included, has got a wharf in there. So.
Right. And Mary Ann and I have received call from another abutter there that wants us to meet with them to talk about their properties.
Yeah, on his nickel.
Right, yeah, please.
So that hasn't been scheduled yet, but we're looking at that
Yeah.
at some point.
Would that be part of this grant, that you would meet with the butters, or would that be in addition? Or would there be an open meeting and a butters would come?
I guess that's up to the town.
Okay, I wasn't really sure what you envisioned in your scope of work.
I'm willing to hold the meeting within the scope of work. I guess it's more of a question of is that what the town wants us to do, is to hold meetings with abutters? I mean, because there could be other abutters that come out
True.
and say they want to have a meeting as well.
Well, as far as where the flooding area goes, it only, there's two ways in and out. There are very few roads in Harpswell that are like that. There's another way in and out for most of it, and the other houses, there's no residences that are affected on that lower level. They're all wharfs and that type of thing. And as far as the flooding goes, the last house as you're coming down Little Cove Road on the right, that didn't get flooded, so. Mary Ann?
Excuse me, Christie, I didn't get a chance. I got a message back from the abutter who he changed it. They wanted a larger meeting to begin with when we talked yesterday. And they were more concerned with just meeting with Will and perhaps myself or the town engineer to talk about some thoughts. I didn't know if you got that update or not.
I did. I think we're really just trying to come at it from, what are we going to do for any abutter who's interested in talking about
Right,
their
right.
property in relation to any of these projects that you're working on? Are we going to have individual meetings? Is that part of the scope of work? Or is there going to be a larger meeting where abutters are invited to come and have
So-
more interaction?
Right.
I can say,
Back off.
on Abner Point Road, I set up a meeting separately, not billing the town, with the two properties.
The
closest-
Stars.
The
Yeah.
Stars, closest to
Yeah.
the boat ramp, and met with him in a separate meeting. So,
So that's part of the scope of work? It fell under our
well, no,
grant?
that's,
Oh, that
I
was
didn't
separate.
bill that to the town.
Oh, okay,
That was
okay.
a separate meeting that I
Okay,
held with
okay.
him.
So, okay,
To discuss what he was interested in doing with his
I
two
see.
properties.
Yeah,
okay. Huh.
yep. I haven't seen him this year.
I've seen him.
So you
He
might,
came to our kickoff meeting,
Oh,
and
that's right, yeah.
then,
That's right, I did see him.
I
yeah.
met with him
Okay.
a month or so after that.
you might do the same with this particular one on
Oh.
Lowell's Cove then, or not? I'm not sure.
I can do that. My understanding is he has an alternative that he's interested in presenting relative to the road.
I bet. Mr. Ironman?
In my role as the planner, I know that we had discussions with Will about situations, alternatives, and maybe it would be worthwhile to let Will sort of go through his take on the situation, even though I know that members of the select board are very familiar with the situation and have been familiar with it for 300 years.
Nice ending.
That's impressive, 300 years.
What's that?
You- Okay. So
Where are we at?
I can go through what I wanted to talk to you about on Abner's Point Road,
Yeah,
and then
I didn't mean to
obviously.
cut you short, I would just, yeah.
No, understood,
Yeah.
and I want to do what
Yeah,
you want us to do.
but from a practical point of view, it doesn't make much sense to raise the road 3 feet. It makes more sense to raise the houses 3 feet.
Agreed. But we also have a grant that has been obtained for this to look at alternatives for making the road more resilient.
All right,
So if we come back and and again, we can come back and say our only option is leave it the way it is, or we can come back and look at various options and explain the challenges associated with those options, which may include that there needs to be, the abutters need to think about what they're going to do if the town decides to raise the road 3
Yeah.
feet.
Sell the houses real quick.
So I think my understanding of our scope is that, okay, the town applied for a grant that includes Lowell's Cove Road on that one. Lowell's Cove and Dingley Island Road are that grant. And our scope is to come back to the town with a report that basically says, here is an option or a couple options that the town could consider if they want to make this road more resilient.
The thing I would be concerned about is those abutters, those neighbors, suing us if we did something which jeopardized their properties?
So again, this
Created
is,
ponding or something in there?
this is just a report.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
a final design plan, so
Yeah.
it's not a design that's, there would have to be, you would have to authorize us to do a design to actually implement any of these options, whether it's one option, two options, whatever. You would ultimately have to pick an option, and then you would have to retain us to do a design, or retain someone to do a design to that. And so it's not like this report is a done deal. It's basically conceptual ideas of how the town could go about, if they so chose, to make that road more resilient, any of these roads more resilient, not just Lowell's Cove Road, any of the four that we're looking at this point.
I can see why abutters are getting concerned. I think it's gonna happen in all locations, you know?
Well, I mean, there's
Almost all.
a couple of the locations actually have relatively minimal impacts, you know. I mean, Bethel Point Road is one there would be impacts to the resource, but very little impact to abutters. But Lowell's Cove, Abner Point is a totally different situation. So you're gonna have fairly significant impacts to the abutters in those areas. It's more densely populated, if you will, and there's gonna be more impacts outside the right-of-way of the road, because the right-of-way of the road is relatively narrow in that case, Abner Point Road in particular. So it's a conundrum with all of this kind of resiliency work that we're doing, whether it's here in Harpswell or Portland or anywhere on the coast, in that most likely there's going to be some abutter impacts one way or the other. And if any of these projects move forward into design and permitting, there's going to have to be some, you know, working relationship with the abutters to figure out how to proceed. It may be entirely, you know, the choice on Lowell's Cove Road, given that you've got two ways in and out of there, it may totally be, okay, we're not gonna do anything here. And there was discussion at the kickoff meeting, is maybe we should be looking up around the corner there on, is it Flag Cove, the next one up, where it wraps around the corner and that
Oh.
goes to a dead end? That may be a more important one, because if that overtops and goes over, then you've got issues with providing emergency services and just general overall access to the houses that are beyond that.
Yeah.
Whereas the section that we're looking at as part of this grant, you can get in from either side.
Right,
Okay.
So is this section of Lowell's Cove the right one to be looking at, I guess?
Yeah.
We've got the grant, so it's kind of hard to go back on that at this point, because you can't just say, well, we don't want to look at this section anymore, let's move the grant money over to this section. I don't think we can do that. But,
it's worthy of investigation. I think retreat might be an option in that, you know, I don't know, 50 years down the road, I don't know when, but
Right.
as
Yeah.
Kevin said, you've got
and I don't think
a
anybody
couple of
knows.
access points,
No.
so, what?
I don't think anybody knows when
Yeah,
at this
right,
point. I
right.
mean, it's,
Yeah.
At some point, the town may close that end of, you know, too much of a problem, and just close the road.
right,
You know, because, like I said, there's no residences there.
right. Whereas, you know, Abner Point Road is a little more of a challenge. There's a lot of people
Right.
down beyond there, and not, you know, and you've got the people right there at the,
Yeah.
at the area that we're looking at, so, I don't know all the answers, I guess, with
Either.
these, and it's kind of a,
Evolving situation.
yeah, it's an evolving situation, and there's a lot of things that come up when you start looking into these, and it's like, okay, well, what do we do with this?
Yeah,
And,
well, you know, I get one thing on one ear, one on the other. One, just have the grant money, just mean you have to spend it. You know, if we don't think it's a viable cause to, you know, Abner Point Road, it just, what are you gonna do? You know, all of a sudden, you rip up $100,000 boat ramp, you force the people to raise their houses, not just there, but up at Luby Drive and Jim Hayes' grandparents' house, and on and on and on, so.
Well, and that's, I guess, a good segue into just opening up my plan here and
Yeah.
just talking a little bit
Probably start
about
with that.
some of those challenges. So, a little bit hard to read at this, but I'll zoom in here. So here we are at, I've still got that spelled wrong, Luby Lane and Abner Point Road. So Luby Lane is here, Abner Point here, and we've got the boat ramp here. So there's a lot of lines on this drawing, but the blue and the pink, or magenta, I guess, are kind of what I want to focus in on. So we're basically tying back into the existing road profile on this end, right around what we're calling, you know, station 7 plus 25 or so. And then on the far end, we tie back in way over here, right around station 1 or so. So you've got about 750 feet of road that we would be looking at raising in this situation. The question becomes, how high do we raise it? So, you know, the Maine Won't Wait plan talks about 1.5 feet, or by, you know, 2050 or 3.9 feet. There's all these different
Right.
numbers that are floating around out there. So if we go and raise the road 1.5 feet from the highest astronomical tide line, which is shown here at this dashed line that you see along this black dashed line that you see, I'm kind of tracing with my cursor. That basically is right where the road is today. It's about 1.5 feet higher than that highest astronomical tide line. So we're pretty much there at this point. If we go and raise it 3.9 feet for above the highest astronomical tide line, it basically raises the road about 2 feet, a little over 2 feet from what it exists today. So if we did that and raised it to basically 2.2 feet, these blue lines here that have F, mostly F, so those are, I'm calling those fill lines. That outer blue line would be essentially the fill line if you built a road 2.2 feet higher than what exists today with 3-to-1 side slopes. So if you don't know what that means, so it's 3 feet horizontal to 1 foot vertical. So it's basically a slope that goes down. 3-to-1 is the slope that you would need to not put in guardrail. If you go steeper than 3-to-1, you would have to put in guardrail along the edges of the road. So the inner blue line is a 2-to-1 slope that would require guardrail along both sides of the road. They don't vary a whole lot, but that basically shows, you know, what the fill line would be on the either side of the road as we kind of move along this.
So for 2-foot rise, it's a 6-foot run you're talking about. Is that within the right-of-way still, or are you good where?
Yeah, so the right-of-way, you can see the right-of-way line is this double dash line here. So we're flirting with that right-of-way line on both sides with a 2.2 foot rise in the road. Because as you see, we're kind of right along the right-of-way here. We go out of the right-of-way into the Star Cottage here. This little parking area, you know, you're into that. And then as we kind of come back up the hill here, we're getting closer and closer to the existing road profile. So the fill slope comes back to the right-of-way here. The pink line, or the magenta line, is looking at a rise, an increase in the road to basically get the road up close to what the FEMA flood elevation is. So the FEMA flood elevation in this location, and this is the revised map that Ransom did for you folks. So we're in this little white zone here, which is elevation 14.
But that's a velocity zone.
It's
So
a velocity, it's a surge zone.
Right.
But the surge, the surge goes over the road and floods the road, you're still not able to use the road, right?
Well, yes, but I mean, and I'm, to me, the velocity zone elevation is the elevation that has a 1% chance of occurring in any year. So if we believe the FEMA and what's there,
Yep, it's the 100-year,
right,
Base.
that elevation is not something that's likely to occur very often.
Except twice in January.
yeah, depends on how many nor'easters we get, right?
Yeah, but I mean, but when it does,
Yep,
it's not like the base flood elevation, which is going to occur
More regular.
monthly or whatever.
correct.
I mean, the base flood elevation of the Stillwater elevation that the state standard is based on is something that's going to occur,
Right,
on high king tides on a regular basis. The velocity elevation is only going to occur,
right.
Every 100 years,
well, or
once in 100 years.
periodically.
Yeah,
It's a probability,
Right.
is what it is. So the magenta lines here basically show the 2-to-1 and the 3-to-1 side slopes for the velocity,
Oh, anyway. so-
the AE zone. So I don't think we even went up to 14, because 14 feet is, from the low point, is 6 feet higher than the existing low point in the road. So we would have to be raising the road 6 feet to get to that.
yeah.
And so the magenta lines basically show you what the fill slope would look like if we were to do that. And as you can see, I mean, we're out here in the cove over here. And then you're creating a situation where you've got to reconstruct at least part of the boat ramp, if not all of it, to get the
all of
slope,
it, it's
to get the
deep
slopes to work.
Right.
I believe the slopes in there are a little bit flatter than what everybody likes anyway, so, but,
As far as the boat ramp?
for the boat ramp,
Yeah,
but.
I've been hearing that.
But I think if you raise the road 6 feet, and, because the low point is basically right in here. If you raise the road 6 feet here, I think you would end up with a
Nice
boat
steep
ramp
ramp,
that's
yeah.
pretty steep. And you wouldn't have this nice kind of pad left here. I mean, you'd be adjusting the elevations in this entire area. So, and you can see as you go up through here, I mean, you're basically encompassing the entire Star Cottage here with that. Pretty much filling in, most of this parking area. This one, we could grade that slope flatter than 3-to-1 in there, so you could still get in here and use some of this parking area. But
What happens in the case of the Stars? I mean, we would have to work with them they would jack up their cottage?
so they,
And-
again, based on my separate meeting with them, they're interested in looking at raising both 30 and 25
Yeah.
up on piers.
The-
And we're looking at that in several other locations down the coast as well, in terms of raising
Yeah.
buildings.
In Garrison Cove, there's a couple of houses that, I think 3 in there that they're looking at raising.
Yeah. So the other thing that we have here is, we've got a cross culvert here that basically drains the ditch along Luby Lane. And when that tide comes up, it basically backflows through that culvert before it breaches the road. And it basically floods out this area on the backside of Abner Point Road before the water actually gets up to the road and spills over the road. And then additionally, you know, my map kind of cuts off here, but, you know, the highest astronomical tide line on this side is roughly right around this location here. So you're getting it, as you said, you're getting it from both sides. This storm event that blows in from this direction, I don't think happens quite as much as the typical nor'easter storm that comes in from this direction.
No.
Maybe I'm wrong, but, so I don't think you necessarily see as much flooding issue with a storm event that's blowing
No, you don't.
in this direction.
So to put the fill extensions out into the cove, DEP, Army Corps of Engineers, it starts getting difficult.
We would have to do something like a retaining wall or something in there to do that. And even that's gonna be a challenge because we're within that 25 feet
Right.
from the
Right.
resource line. All of this will be a challenge with DEP
Will,
to permit.
does that culvert have any benefit when it flows in? Is the salt water that comes in from the cove, Mary Ann, an environmental benefit?
You know,
And I ask that because can that be made a one-way culvert like they've done in Damascotta or whatever?
Yeah, we could put a tide valve or a flap gate or
Yeah.
something on there to prevent the water from
Right.
backflowing through it. It's drainage relief for Luby Lane.
Right,
It's just a ditch. If it was, you know, you do have situations where, along the coast, where you've got a culvert that's feeding a salt marsh.
Exactly.
In this case, the salt marsh, this, is fed, you know, from this side,
Right.
not from the cove side.
and does the flooding back through that culvert create a problem? Or does it just create a puddle?
Creates a problem for these folks here.
Yeah.
On their driveway, yeah, that lane, Luby Lane.
It basically fills in, it starts flooding this yard here and floods it from the backside. And then if the water gets up high enough and it spills over the road, so it's already
Right.
flooded over there
Right.
before it actually spills over the road.
Excuse me, just to Mark's question, we might have moved on, but that takes all the runoff of fresh water from up the hill. That's where that,
Right,
so basically it's a freshwater culvert you were asking me about.
yeah, I mean, the question is what Will was just saying, is there any benefit of salt water coming back through the culvert?
I don't
No, it's a
think
ditch.
so. I'm not a scientist, but I don't think so.
Okay, all right, so,
There is a natural spring back there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
So-
believe I can be wrong, I believe that low area that stays fairly swampy might not, has cattails in it, so it's
Oh,
fresh
yeah.
water, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Are you saying this,
Right on Luby,
On Luby Lane,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
This area here?
Cattails all the way up.
I think so,
yeah, so I would say
yeah.
the edges of it may be more fresh, but as you get closer and closer out this way, I think
As you
it's,
go north,
yeah,
it becomes more brackish.
brackish,
But towards Abner Point Road, it is,
more fresh.
and you can see it by the, I'm only going by the cattails.
No, I agree with you, based on what I've seen. Yeah.
Will, let me ask my question in this situation.
Sure.
Typically, we say we're going to design to 1.9 feet of sea level rise, or 3, or 1.5, or 3.9. And I often like to think in terms of reverse engineering that says what could be done reasonably and what level of sea level rise would that accommodate? And is it possible to think about that in terms of this situation? And then whether that amount makes economic sense?
Yes, I mean, so the blue lines, again, are the strict 3.9, it's
Right.
2.2 feet above the existing road,
Right.
essentially. So it gives you, if you went something less than that, say we wanted to raise it a foot, those fill lines are gonna come in a little bit from what we're showing there. It will improve the situation, but you're still gonna have a certain amount of time where the road's not gonna be
Right,
passable.
Yeah.
right.
It's gonna make it better than what it is today, but it's not gonna be,
Yeah.
as good as,
And I mean, to me, it's kind of like, you made the comment about the boat launch.
yeah,
And to me, the question is, how far can you elevate the road
right.
and have a usable boat launch?
And we still need to run that,
And how
Exercise.
far can you elevate the road and be able to get into the house next to the boat launch? Because even if they elevate the house, unless they're gonna do a lot of fill, if the
yeah.
road
and the-
goes up 3 feet,
And the fill is, these two red lines here. So this is the 25-foot
right,
NRPA setback, this is a 75. So it's easier to permit the fill between these two lines than starting to fill over here. So that was one of the questions that I was asked
right.
by the Stars, is can we just fill our lot to, and rather than put
Oh,
our
I see.
cottage up on piers, and
My-
you're gonna have to do an individual permit to try and do that.
Well,
my
and
sense
my,
is you're
and
just
my
not gonna-
understanding
you're not gonna
is
get
the floodplain ordinance would prohibit
it. Correct, because you're,
bringing in fill to raise the house.
right,
It would have to be on.
and that's
on
what we're
piers.
seeing elsewhere,
Right.
is,
And then the parking area, presumably getting in and out of the parking area and using it is easier, because at that point, the level of elevation is less.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the match line there.
this parking area, I think, we may not be able to maintain that. This parking area, I think we can regrade this to make this work.
Right, because at that point, the road only goes up a little bit.
Right, we're almost back to tying back.
So to me, if, thinking about it, if we go back to the boat launch, the intersection, the 3 houses there, to me, the question in my mind is what level of elevation can be done in a way that makes it still possible to reasonably get in and out of those properties.
Right,
And that might get us to a number that says, well, you can only do a foot or whatever, and then the question becomes, is that worth it, or?
right. And in this case, well, the challenge with the, kind of the ancillary impacts, the abutting impacts is, how do you put a cost to that for those, if you say you're gonna raise the road 3.9 feet, or, and it's impacting this, well, what comes first there. I mean, if the town says we want to raise the road and it's impacting this property, is that, how do you deal with that? So is
Well,
that,
yeah, I mean, that's a real,
so I think what you're saying is basically, what can we do without causing abutting impacts for the most part? This
Yeah, I
one,
mean,
this
we-
property is gonna be hard right here, because it's basically right
right,
there.
right.
Even raising the road a foot is gonna raise the road well above the floor of that property. So,
But they need to do something anyway. I mean, their place isn't gonna be there.
True.
they do.
It's gonna go
But
away.
if the town comes in and says, hey, we're doing this,
Well, that was my concern in the beginning.
Yeah.
That's-
are they gonna
Obviously, we've
say,
got to
well,
do this hand in
to do
hand.
this, you need to do this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
Oh, yeah.
if we present that, it's,
And raising the road even further up, the houses on the other side of the road, is gonna create washout for them. It's gonna be, there's the curb, there's their driveway, and the water coming off the road.
yeah, and in this house here, I mean, raising that road a foot, it's
Which, the cop,
wiggle,
which one?
wiggle your cursor. Which house are you talking about?
Yeah,
right here.
Oh, okay, I thought so, but,
You know,
yeah, that's Jim Hayes' house.
Oh, that one is.
I think they're already kind of below the road to begin with. and
They are.
It's just gonna,
They were pretty concerned in that kickoff
it's gonna
meeting.
make it
yeah, you're gonna
worse.
put them in a bowl.
Yeah, a bigger bowl.
Well,
And that's a harder house to raise in terms of putting it on piers. I believe they're on, they've got a basement there, but,
well, if the plan was in place, and just put it on a shelf for 20 years from now, it wouldn't hurt anything. I won't be here. Mark might, but I won't.
I doubt that. You'll be here.
20 years, 90?
well, I won't, because Mark's already said I'm retiring.
Yeah. I know. He got himself confused with himself. He's retiring.
All right, so I mean, I think we can, we can proceed on that note, and we can look at,
Don't look at me, look at them when
yeah,
you
look
say
at the,
that, when
look at the
that's-
boat ramp and look at minimizing the impacts. This property here is gonna be the challenging one from my
Yeah.
perspective.
But if the plan's there,
Yeah.
then and they could look at it when the plan's done and make up their mind what they want to do with the house, in 20 years. In that case, it'll be the kids of Jesse Starr.
Okay,
Yep.
and, yeah, we can definitely look at, putting a tide valve on that culvert, so that
Yeah.
doesn't,
Yeah, I mean, to me.
that would be
Yeah,
that would probably be something that would be reasonable to do right off the bat.
Right,
Easy fix,
exactly.
yeah.
Just to prevent that
just
from
foot valve.
happening,
Yeah.
Mary Ann?
the next King
What
Tide.
did, I think I missed what you just said, because you probably said what I was just going to say. When you said something about, when you put the plan out, we're going to talk about what can be done logically.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I think we're going to have to address the option of why we're not going to the 3.3-foot rise that we have in there. But not to say that we have to do it, but could we have some kind of a statement that says why? That addresses it to the people?
That would be too big of an impact on anybody down there. This is the minimal one, but what takes care of the extreme high tide.
Exactly, and I think, I didn't know, and it might be in the final project, but I think we have to address it. That's the only point I wanted to make.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, this is one of those evolving policy issues
Yeah.
of when do you say,
Yeah,
making it possible for all the rest of the people on Abner Road and be able to get in and out, versus trying to maintain those 3 properties and the boat launch and whatever. At some point, somebody's gonna have to say, maybe we're gonna write those off.
Well, in a big storm, you get a 3-hour window where you probably can't get out,
Yeah, and
Get in.
Kevin, that to me,
either.
yeah,
Either way.
is one of my concerns about all of this. And it's like we were talking, I think it was Nancy, who was looking at Potts Point and down by,
Dingley,
Dingley
Dingley
Island.
Island.
yeah. And, yeah, it was flooded for a little while, but a couple hours after high tide, it was passable.
Yep, it's like Abner Point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It wasn't even, it was an hour, I think, down there. And you picked, trucks were getting through anyway.
right.
And I think we started to talk to that issue at the Resiliency, one of our committee meetings.
Right.
That we can start talking about that as we talk about sea level. People to start thinking in that direction. On that particular grant, we wrote up some policies where you might want to do as emergency issues to consider, and having people just understand that they might have to leave their house for this period of time
Right.
if it's important that they have a medical emergency and need to get out. But those are areas I think we can start starting to ease into the public to start thinking about.
But we gotta make sure the rumor doesn't get out, the town plans on raising the road right away. That's exactly what'll happen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If anybody sees this, oh, Jesus, they're gonna raise the road down Abner Point. No, we're not. But it's gonna go on a shelf, slid away for years down the road. It could be 50 years for all we know. We don't know.
But I think your point, Mary Ann, is you're gonna be educating these people about ideas for perhaps leaving if emergency vehicles can't get to a location, if there's a predicted storm coming and major storm surge and
Right,
level rise.
I'm
Okay.
thinking, for example, of Abner, this, what would it need to take the effect on the people that are living in this area, and what it would take to raise the road.
Well, in the
For-
winter, you have about 4 year-round residents in
Yeah.
Abner Point.
For what you call nuisance flooding, and I believe Barney, in one of his other projects, he basically has a chart of you raise it this much, you will get this much nuisance flooding per year. And it will become a conversation, I believe, going forward, is how much is a road, let's just say, how much nuisance flooding are they going to consider is okay compared to what the cost would be to do something different?
Right,
what you're
right,
saying,
that's
yeah.
exactly the,
And that's the conversation I think we need to start having.
Yeah. I think most people agree with that, It's like the estimate for Basin Point Road, was it 750,000 for, what, a quarter of a mile around the turn? And
Yeah.
let it flood.
Yeah. And how often does it happen? We're gonna,
Once,
it happened this, like the first time, I think,
yeah,
in January. Yeah.
yeah.
But I think it's pointing out the issue that we have to, I think, start addressing slowly with the public.
David and I saw the same thing in 78.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
true.
boy.
I wasn't here in
In a lot of
78.
ways, it was a lot worse, a
Yeah.
lot more property damage back then.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Took out every wharf on the coast.
Yep.
Yeah.
and let's see, that was 45 years ago, right?
I just moved back here, and I left a week later. I'll see you in the spring.
Len's End gift shop, gone.
No, I'm just, if you think about the time
Time,
frame
yeah.
and how
Cycle.
often that,
Oh, yeah.
what the timeline is between those major storms.
Oh, yeah. and
So
contributing factors.
have we seen Abner Point flood?
I've seen the water up the road. I've never seen it. I don't
Like it
remember-
was in January, you haven't
Yeah,
seen that?
but I don't remember.
Yeah.
I was on another wharf watching that go in '78. The major commercial wharf from Mackerel Cove went, there's a, called Steamboat Wharf.
Mary Ann, have you been collecting data at the Mackerel Cove, Abner Point area about flooding across the road?
A little bit,
Microphone.
a little bit, but not, thank you, David. But Kevin can probably, is a better judge.
Okay.
I would say that normally Mackerel Cove, we've had some southeast storms this winter, which isn't typical for Maine, my understanding is.
No.
And Mackerel Cove filled in from the south, which is unusual, but I believe those times is because the king tide was at 14 feet or so. So it was the amount of height of the water that pushed through enough to flood it. I've gone down there in previous years, and I had never seen it flooded. And it drains out. It drains out as soon as the tide changes. So I think those are important things to start talking about when we, as part of the conversation when we have these.
And Will's going to do that in his report.
You are correct.
Huh? No, I think I think this is a perfect example of, does it make sense to incur the cost and the disruption
Yep.
until it gets to be Kevin's,
A regular occurrence.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll wait around for it.
And you might have to live with some nuisance flooding
Yeah.
in the interim. And I think that's an important message to start getting people to think about, because, when we did the meeting on the Hen Cove, and people are saying, well, build a bridge and put it up 20 feet in the air and whatever, so, we can always get down there. And that, to me, is kind of the immediate response, is that the road is going to be changed so that it is never going to flood. And that probably is an unrealistic expectation.
Cost-wise, it's unrealistic.
Yeah, and reasonableness, it's also.
Yeah. And we have so many
Okay.
things coming our way financially in this town.
Okay.
All right?
That's
You know what
very
you're
helpful.
going to do?
Good discussion.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just a little bit on Lowell's Cove, you're correct on the other end, where it comes around that corner. If you're gonna raise it anywhere, that'd be where you did it.
And Mary Ann,
Sometimes-
in terms of the scope of work, we might want to talk with Will.
For which, what are we talking, which one?
Lowell Cove.
Okay.
And if I understand the discussion, it's maybe we should be looking at another section of the road rather than what's been identified. Is that correct?
Yes, and I can say that people at the meeting, Charlie Johnson, for one, sent a letter to talk about that area by Sue Baker's house. And that culvert area.
Well, that's what you-
That is the area that is more important to get to the 100 or so house, well, maybe it's not 100.
It's a lot.
There's a lot of houses down there.
And Will, you haven't really spent a lot of money on that yet, right?
Nope, well, we've just had the kickoff meeting, really.
Right.
So
Yeah.
And so I really think if we can say we had the kickoff meeting and the engineer and the public said, we're not looking at the right spot, we want to move, it's not more than a couple hundred feet?
I know it's a little more than
Yeah,
maybe 200, but
Probably 400 feet.
Probably
Yeah,
400 feet.
down the road. My sense is that, GoPIF is pretty flexible. Oh, that's a main DOT grant,
I
right?
think they would be pretty flexible too,
Yeah.
because,
Well, it's Lowell's Cove.
because it's Lowell's Cove.
Right.
And
Do they know what section of
I'd
Lowell's
say it
Cove
wasn't
we're
even
looking
that specific to begin with.
I would have to,
Yeah,
sort-
I
yes and
mean,
no, because I said, I think I said
don't
at
think we
Flag
should immediately write off that we can't look at the problem.
No, I think we can, I mean, we have kickoff meetings, which is
Right.
part of the process.
Exactly.
We want input, we're taking input and following through and investigating it. So to
Right.
me, it makes sense.
But what you were talking about earlier, Mark, nuisance flooding is exactly what Lowell's Cove is.
Oh, yeah.
There's no residents there, there's no hurry. You have
Right.
another way to get.
There's, if we were doing a prioritization, that's why that was one of the last ones we looked at.
Yeah.
Because we have a prioritization map of how we chose the spots to do studies. And a lot of it is the amount of people that are going to be affected. Is there all these issues to make you pull up something in the priority list? And that was lower because of that.
So are we moving the Lowell's Cove one to
Yes.
Flag Cove?
I
or-
think so.
Yeah, I think we should work on that. I would put your energy there.
That's where all the
And
homes
I know we have
Right.
a request to
are,
meet.
Baker's Corner.
Well, that can just make that request go away then.
It might even make it more strong, make us stronger. I don't know what their request is.
Okay.
It would be interesting, because it might be the same thing we're thinking about.
Well, at this point, there's no meeting scheduled because
No.
they basically
Yeah.
had time
Yeah.
issues, or, so we didn't schedule anything.
And we could even, we can handle this off.
Yeah. I think it's a good direction to head.
Okay?
Okay?
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Will.
Hey, thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Mary Ann's up next for this.
Enjoy your retirement.
The rumor
I'm
started
sorry.
here. The rumor started in this building.
Oh, this is my drawing.
Oh, Mary Ann, did you want to talk about the grant application for Garrett's Cove? It sounded like we're just sharing.
Ken, you want to?
Mary Ann, did you need any copies up there for you or Ken?
I have
Or you all
copies.
set? Okay.
And I'm not sure how much detail we'll get into. If you want more detail, I'll put it on the screen. But let's just talk about the project, for starters. So I sent a letter quite late this morning, and just because it probably didn't get on the agenda, it's basically saying that we talked to you last week about the Main Infrastructure Adaptation Fund grant to do construction on a town landing. And we received your authorization to apply for that grant. It came to our attention that Garrison Cove Road landing on the other side of town also is a good candidate for repair. Now, the state,
Will, is this yours?
that's mine.
Oh, okay.
The state grant is, we are allowed to apply for 3 under this grant. With the same, the
Three?
up to 3 grants.
Oh, we can apply for up to
to 3
three.
grants,
And this will be
and
number
each
2.
one is
Yeah.
its own
Yeah.
project. So, based on that and what we've learned about Garrison Cove Road landing, Ken and I and the committee met and thought we'd like to try to see what we could do.
I think it's a great idea. I've never,
How about that?
Yeah, I wonder where this idea came from.
So, so basically, in talking to Mark and looking at Barney's drawings, which were a bit sketchy, we feel that it's basically, what brings it to the fore is the fact that the boat launch itself is almost gone because it's so disintegrated. And it's really a case of erosion control that we're trying to do in this project. Did you want to step in here, or do you want me to continue?
You're doing great.
All right. So basically, we're talking about, the project's going to raise the road and landing. Now, when we talk about the road, this is where I sent you the drawing. Everything in yellow that has the blue outline around it, probably printed, is it printed in color?
I printed it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is town-owned land. And the idea is, and you'll notice the green behind it, Barney's focus here was to curtail or lessen the erosion that is occurring down there. And he's doing that with what is considered the shorefront resiliency, and he's getting into how that would be done in the budget. So basically, what this would do is you'd go down Garrison Cove Road, it's down at the end, and the town landing, for those of you who are familiar, is basically, you could go straight into the landing almost with just a little jog.
No.
And then the road turns and goes over to Cook's Lobster House, plus the lobster co-op that is going to be going in there. The elevation of the road is high to begin with, which is good, but, so what you would be doing is raising the elevation enough so that you could continue to go on to Cook's, for example, to the left. Raise the elevation enough for the landing to have steeper slope, is that the term, Mark?
It would be, you wouldn't change the slope a whole lot
No.
on Garrison Cove.
That's right, it's,
Maintain
it's,
pretty much
it's,
as it is.
Right, the elevation of the road doesn't change very much, if at all.
So people were concerned that if we'd raise it like we did down in Macro Cove,
yeah, okay, so that's where the concern was.
it wasn't a perfect plan.
No.
It works good, but
Yeah,
if the elevation had gone along with the beach,
yeah,
it'd been a little better.
right. And so the thought here is that, keeping this in mind, it's going to need more engineering as part of the construction process. We would highlight the concerns and what we have to do. It can only do, the state has said we can only work on town lands or town property or town roads. So what Mark's drawing on this blue outline shows what is town land and what is not town land.
Yep.
When Barney did the estimate, he included some areas that are not town land in this estimate. However, we've taken that into account and removed 25% of that particular 142,000 from the cost. So what we're down to is this 2022 concept design budget is 308,000 plus a few, less the 36 for the items that are not on town property. So it gets us down to, in 2022 dollars. The question always is, though, what are 2022 dollars worth now? And we saw what would happen at Mitchell Field. And so we're suggesting that we apply for between $500,000 and $700,000 for this project, and that would account for inflation. I had a concern about it being too high, but Mark assured me the state is willing to take money back if it's too high. I mean, if we find we don't have to spend it.
Right.
If we take into consideration the $25,000 that you committed last week for Lookout Point Road, the SPIRA account has a balance of, well, forgetting that, we have $25,000 in SPIRA committed already for previous grants. It leaves a balance of $85,000 available. $25,000 of that is committed for the Lookout Point project. So anything that's left, you can probably subtract faster than I can, would be available without needing a town meeting approval from the selectmen.
Up to the 50,000.
Up to 50.
Up to 50,000,
Up to
right.
50.
We have,
But $50,000 of local match would be $1 million project.
Right,
And
and
we're not talking
and we're not
anywhere near
talking
that.
about that at all. We're talking about a project between 500 and 700,000. And because you're in the business, Kevin, you probably have a better idea which direction to go on that number.
So Mary,
this-
oh, go ahead.
No idea anymore.
You don't, okay.
Mary Ann, just to clarify, within the blue lines on this drawing that we got today, it's both additional design and construction, primarily of an erosion control, kind of, that is the purpose. to
Erosion
address-
control and replacement of the boat launch.
Of the boat launch, okay. But there's not much hiring of the road, or maybe a bit, but not much.
A bit, I think.
My
Okay.
question is, what happens on the side, especially the side to the left? Are we going to create problems there if we're working within our area?
When you say the left, you mean on the east side or the
Going
west
toward
side?
Cook.
I mean,
the
west
road-
side,
West
the west side.
West side.
Um,
Like, are we going to create a problem for an abutter? Do we need to work with the abutter?
I think we have to work with the abutter.
Okay,
Yeah.
because,
We also have an abutter who's on the other side of the road. The new house, not the new house, the old house that they renovated 3 years ago and has flooded 3 times since
Yeah.
then.
The one that's sitting in the swamp.
She had contacted me and said, when you're ready to do something, we'd like to talk. We might be able to,
yeah,
Yeah.
Are
do
we gonna-
something together.
make their situation better? Or are we going to create issues for them to have to deal with? A combination?
I don't think it would change it very much, actually.
It won't have any impact at all, but whatever they do, whatever we do, I've already talked to them about it. They'd like to continue it on, along the people on the corner, because they want to know when we're going to do something. No idea.
It's
But
already a
they would-
problem. I
So
don't-
basically, it would probably go almost all the way down to that cottage. They would invest in some type of erosion control,
They would.
yeah.
I think it's worth pointing out, I think they would benefit because
Yeah,
the,
okay.
I
Sure.
think they would
all right,
too,
sure.
but-
Kenemic, part of Resiliency and Sustainability Committee,
Mouthful.
in case you didn't know. I think the green that you see on this chart, those are, they call the marine mattresses, and that design of that is you would have dunes and dune grass over that. And the purpose of that would protect Wentworth Lane and the houses, so I think there would be beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think when we present that into the grant, I think that would be part of, we'd want to emphasize that this is, they should be a beneficiary of this. They would certainly want to make them a partner, as they would probably want to do mitigation as well, but it should not be causing more of a problem for them.
But
Okay.
And-
I've told them both to raise their houses, because it's,
Right.
over the years, it's flooded anyway. Not like it did,
Right.
In that one house, he had a 19-foot boat on a trailer, and it picked it up and put it in the swamp.
And if you look at the drawing, and you look at where the boat launch is, the head of the boat launch where it goes on to the existing town road, you'll notice some little circles on either side of it. And Barney's concern about the future usability of the boat launch was to really stabilize those 2 corners, or where the boat launch joins the town road. So the proposal is to put sizable bouldering in there to really stabilize that. So if erosion does occur down along Wentworth or whatever, it's not going to erode the head of the boat launch.
And it did this year, on the west side of the boat launch.
Did it?
On the road, yeah.
Now, wait, when you say this year,
Oh, yeah, you're
January.
right,
January.
yeah. yeah.
bingo,
We paid
that
some
needs to be
repairs.
pictures of that.
We have some pictures, because we had to
Okay.
repair that.
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah.
That needs, because the key thing in terms of these grants is that there was damage, and the grant is proposing to do things
That's good.
to, one, correct the damage, but also make them more resilient
Yeah.
against future
Oh, good.
damage.
So somebody took pictures then?
I think so.
Both sides?
I'm quite sure. I hope
So,
Yeah.
So that's a key in terms of what's being proposed, is stabilizing that entrance.
And it's interesting, I got a really good letter of support from Billy Saxton, and he brings out how they use just about all these launches in town.
oh, yeah.
And this is the draft, the steepness, again, I never know how to say it. The steepness
Slope, yeah.
of, the slope on
Pitch.
this is,
Slope.
and pitch, makes it a place that he can pull larger boats with
Yeah.
bigger draft. And the other thing, the other point that has come up, if we are challenged a bit at Mackerel Cove, you would want to have this type 4 harbor be one that would be resilient going forward, when others may not be.
Yeah. Market Cove, there was no damage there
No,
at the landing on Abner Point,
no.
other than a couple of wharfs. They get out of it pretty
I
easy.
think we
They
had to
have-
move some rocks that went across the road
Yeah.
at Abner.
But just thinking about why, what we're saying, some of the problems are about raising that to stay resilient. We have this is kind of a great spot because the road is high to begin with, when you think about it.
Yeah,
And I'm going to sing the same song. The key in the grant is to say, this is a critical piece of town infrastructure to support the marine interests, and the head of the boat launch and surrounding areas suffered damage during the storms, and the proposal is to both rebuild the damaged boat launch, but as importantly, stabilize the shoreline on either side of the boat launch so you don't have future damage. That's the song, I think.
I'm glad we have that recorded. Thank you.
Did you want to write that?
He just did.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what this, what I heard the state say
Yes.
they're looking for.
That's exactly what Sierra
Right.
told me when I talked to her as well.
Right.
And when you use the term mattresses, do you mean like a living shoreline?
It's a type of
Yeah,
living
okay.
shoreline. I think it was a combination of, see if I got this straight, basket with
Right.
rocks.
Right, there's stone within, it's literally mattress shaped with a mesh holding the stone below.
And then
the
helical
living shoreline
helical
Yeah.
on top.
anchors holding it in, covered over with landscape cloth,
Yeah.
and then,
The- It should be, we can get you this if anyone.
No, I think if anyone's listening and they hear
Yeah,
you say
no.
mattresses, they might wonder what you're talking
The
about.
purpose is marine mattress.
Everybody's got an old mattress they
They're
want to
getting them
donate.
they're redecorating the Holiday Inn in Portland.
it's about
No,
the
but-
tires don't work.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because living shorelines has come up, as we've talked to people even at Lookout Point, where we're talking about riprap, so I think we're gonna try to stay away from that term, because it just,
And this is really not fully living shoreline,
no.
because this really uses rock,
Yeah.
whatever you call those things. There's a French word for it, where you put rocks in.
Gabion? No.
Huh?
Gabion? No.
No, gabion, yeah, or in there. So there is rock in a wire mesh as the base,
However, the soft topping
right,
absorbs the energy rather than deflecting it.
yep.
Sounds like a great project. It should be funded.
I think so, but
yeah.
we gotta figure out for how much. So that's what we wanna lock in with you. What do we figure, Ken, if we do if you go to 700, it was how much?
That'd be
35,000.
35,000 match.
Yep.
So you should probably vote to authorize the grant be submitted and that you allow up to 35,000 to be used as a town match toward that project.
From Spira.
Yep.
Second that, David.
Yep. Was that your motion?
It's yours.
You seconded it, did you?
Yeah, yeah.
All in
Yeah,
favor?
I move that we support the project and use up to 35,000 in spirit funds and authorize Christie to sign it.
There we go. Seconded? All in favor?
Great job.
Thank you.
Great job. You really hustled and got that together.
It's not
Yeah.
done.
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
no, thanks for doing that, though.
5 days.
can I have public comment here? This is a classic example of why Spira is a key element. This project funding opportunity was announced by the state in May. Applications are due in the 1st of July, and you've got to be able to tell the state that you've got the local match for the project. If there wasn't a kitty of money, and you had to go to town meeting, as advocated by some people in the past, you would never do these projects.
But, yep.
Very good point. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Now we got to get to work.
Yes.
The deadline is July 1st, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, plenty of time.
You got pictures of any flooding, send them along.
Okay, we'll look for that.
And damage.
Is
Yeah.
You know-
Paul in today or is he out?
He's out for the rest
I'll
of the
send
day.
an email, because he, I think, can be really important on talking about the erosion and
Yep.
what goes on, what goes on down there. As far as even, you think of having to move, well, I won't use the most recent
Well, yesterday?
project, but even the ATOMs that they take in and out
Pile
of
of
there,
guts.
you need that for moving those channel markers in and out at the end of the
Yeah.
season, aren't they?
What's that?
Are they seasonally
Oh,
taken
yeah.
out?
Oh, yeah,
From when we used to have frozen water there
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The old days.
in the old days. So, but anyhow, yeah. So I'll see if I can get something from them. Thank you.
Yeah, great job.
All right, the committee direction regarding solar array at Mitchell Field.
So I wanted to make sure you all received copies of,
Yeah, I saw
do you
James.
have Jane's comments?
Yep.
She's unable to be here today, and she was concerned that the board hadn't really given very specific direction to the committees that are going to be looking at the solar array issue at Mitchell Field. And so she wanted you to consider a motion where you would ask the Mitchell Field Committee and the Energy and Technology Committee to really help provide input so the town could do what's called an expression of interest, which is similar to what we did for the cell tower at Mitchell Field. We first put out an expression of interest to a number of companies. I mean, it might have been 30-plus companies, and then we received maybe 7 or 8 responses that these companies were interested in the project and would be interested in responding to something more formal, like an RFP. And so you also did receive an email today with a member of the public suggesting a possible way forward as well.
Well, I
So-
think it's, first of all, I want to say it's outrageous that he suggests that we don't listen to or respect the advice of our committees, that we just go ahead and do whatever we want. And that's, which is exactly what his email said. The Mitchell Field Committee's had the stewardship of Mitchell Field for 25 years through LNG and everything else, and they know what they're doing. I absolutely think that we should go forward with an EOI to see whatever interest there might be, and engage both the Energy and Technology and Mitchell Field Committee. I'm liaison to both of those committees, and to suggest they don't know what they're doing and they need to be told what to do is crazy. So, I mean, they know,
But
they know
Jane
what's going on.
wasn't suggesting that. Your colleague
No,
wasn't
the
suggesting that.
email
Yeah,
was
I just
suggesting
wanted to
that.
be
I'm not
aware.
Jane. So Jane's suggestion that we pursue an EOI is a good one. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that without making any commitments to anyone. But I think the Mitchell Field Committee has had stewardship of the field for a long time. They know what they're doing. They ask a lot of questions. They involve the public in what they're doing, and I don't think they need to be told what to do, or that we need to ignore their advice. That's my input. So I will advise them, we're going to meet on the 11th, joint meeting,
Okay.
I will bring this letter from Jane along with me, and we'll talk about it.
Does the board as a entity support her motion? She actually had a motion. I don't know if you want me to
Oh.
read that aloud.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, Dave.
Sure. Well, what she says is, I move that we ask the Mitchell Field Committee and Energy and Technology Committee to assist in this process by providing input for an EOI, which is a expression of interest, that would stipulate the scope, general location, and size of a solar array at Mitchell Field, and to include requesting the kind of information we have received from revision, such as preliminary economic terms. It would also be helpful if the committee identified specific companies that would receive the EOI. So, yeah, that's, I'll pass that motion along, I'll make that
All right.
motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Right?
Okay, so we'll make sure the chair, I know you will follow up, David, but I'll make sure the chairs
Sure.
know you passed this as
Sure,
a
yeah.
select
Yep.
board today.
Yep.
I think Jane was concerned that you wouldn't meet again until the 11th. The committees, when they meet jointly on July 8th, can talk about doing this and can start doing it, because we're on a pretty tight timeline.
Yep.
If we want to get information
Yep.
out,
Yep.
expressions of interest, because it has to come back to the select board as a
Sure,
document
and
that's
then we'd have to
approved.
be a town meeting in
So I
November.
think Jane is suggesting she'd like to have this information and consider a warrant article for November. But, I think it may depend upon what you get for responses.
Yep.
Right, yep.
I don't know that she's committed completely to that.
And how much the public kills us in the process.
Anyway, okay. Did you want to add to it at all? No? Okay.
Anything else?
Wisely staying out of it.
No, I think that's it. Did you have anything else?
In that case, we're adjourned.